There seems to be a widespread belief that people who advance the cause of socialism are simply calling for a more extensive welfare state. This seems to be especially true in America, where conservatives often conflate socialism with welfarism, claiming that socialism is simply about receiving free stuff. Of course, this just reveals their ignorance of history and politics, something that US conservatives and their supporters are known for. If these clowns actually knew what they were talking about, they would know that the first welfare states were created in order to defend the conservative European establishment, as well as the capitalist economic system. For example, the first welfare measures in the age of industrialized capitalism were implemented by Germany's Iron Chancellor, Otto von Bismarck. These reforms included sickness insurance, accident insurance, and old age and disability pensions. These policies were all introduced when Bismarck's anti-socialist laws were in full effect. These laws repressed the German Social Democratic Party and other leftist parties, as well as banning their affiliated trade unions, newspapers, and other organizations that were associated with the left. Therefore, it is clear that Bismarck, the champion of both the industrial capitalists and conservative landlords, was using a carrot-and-stick approach when it came to dealing with the working class. He wanted to smash their already limited political power with his anti-socialist laws, whilst introducing welfare measures in order to keep the working class content and loyal to the German state. So, the first ever welfare state was introduced as a counter-revolutionary measure in order to stop the rise of socialism and ensure loyalty to a state that was upholding the capitalist economic system. The next state that implemented welfare measures was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which gave workers accident insurance in 1887, health insurance in 1888, and the old age pension for white-collar workers in 1906. Once again, these policies were introduced to weaken the appeal of socialism among the working class and build support for the aristocratic and capitalist establishment. So the creation of the welfare state by these conservative monarchies was not seen as a step towards socialism, but rather an attempt to stop its advance. Indeed, the welfare state in Imperial Germany and Austria-Hungary did not change the capitalist mode of production in any way, nor did it promote workplace democracy. Instead, these measures were designed to increase the workers' loyalty to the imperial state, which protected the interests of capitalists and landowners. Also, it is not unreasonable to suggest that these welfare measures were a cheaper option than funding a system of state repression. So how successful were these reforms? Despite the welfare measures being in place, the number of strikes grew from 73 in 1892 to 3,480 in 1906. However, it should be pointed out that more strikes occurred in France and Britain during that time. In Austria-Hungary, these reforms had similar results, and also failed to stop the growth of trade unions and political parties associated with the left. Before we go on, it should be understood that both the German and Austro-Hungarian empires were far more liberal than the Russian Empire, which was basically a totalitarian state. In Germany and Austro-Hungary, you could be a radical leftist and not be arrested. Indeed, Karl Liebknecht, one of the leaders of the Spartacist uprising in 1918, was even allowed to sit in the German Reichstag as a member. Furthermore, whilst Russia had a brutal secret police, Germany and Austro-Hungary did not. Why is this relevant? Because Russia, despite the repression, was basically in a state of constant turmoil leading up to the First World War. Assassinations of Tsarist ministers, the 1905 revolution, mutinies and violent strikes. Why did the people resort to such measures? Because they were not happy with the political and economic system. The point I am trying to make is that granting concessions to the working class, so they grumble less about the capitalist system, is not socialism. It is actually the intelligent way capitalists can keep their power without the working class rising up against them. As Otto von Bismarck said, whoever has a pension for his old age is far more content and far easier to handle than one who has no such prospects. Bismarck also noted that public servants were willing to put up with far more abuse than those who worked in the private sector because a public servant had a pension to look forward to. This view was also adopted by fascists. General Franco, the savior of capitalism in Spain, introduced several welfare measures in order to keep the Spanish working class content with his rule. So we can conclude that conservatives who claim that introducing welfare measures in a capitalist economy is a step towards socialism are wrong. Welfare measures that are introduced by right-wing governments are there to make sure the working class accepts the capitalist system.